It's gotten cold outside. It's still fall, but it's winter as far as the garden's concerned. So today is cleanup day. It's time to winterize the garden and get it all put away. We need to put the new raised bed into position, get it all set. We need to get the buckets down from the deck. I don't know if you've realized, but the deck is elevated. It's about 10 feet up, so we've got to get them down below. And then we got to fill up the bed. We got to get it all prepared to survive the winter and put the dirt away and take care of all of that. So let's go. I'm not really a big fan of starting a car up just to move it out of the garage, so I pushed the car out, and then Joan helped me carry the thing around and place it about where we wanted it to go. I then, went about leveling it. It doesn't need a whole lot of leveling, just some amount of leveling. It's off by maybe 3 inches, 4 inches, something like that. Probably a little less than 4 inches. And so I cleared out the sod from the high spots and got it pretty much level. It doesn't have to be perfectly level. It's not like it's holding water, but I got it pretty well cleaned up, pretty well leveled down, and just left the sod in the middle of it because it will become a part of the buildup of the materials that are going inside of it, the dirt and whatnot. So I think it turned out pretty good, and I'm happy with the way it's sitting there. You can see that a little bit of the 2x4 on the side is showing, so it's just, just under 4 inches. Well, you can tell there's been a change in the weather. It's gotten a little cold. All the leaves have died, and it's time to do something with it. So we're going to move these all down below and put the garden away for the winter. So yeah. The first time that we did this, we carried the buckets down when we were done through the house, and that was a lot of work. If you needed a leg day, that was a day to do it. But the last couple times we've found that just lowering them down with the rope made it a little bit easier. Didn't have to walk up and down. We didn't traipse mud or water or goo through the house. And so I just tied them up and lowered them down, and Joan grabbed them and moved them over to stage them in front of the bed so it was all ready to go. We got all the buckets down. Now I'm gonna kind of fill up the bin. Bed, let's put it this way. I'm going to fill up the bed with this compost pile that we've been nursing for a couple of years, and the plants and stuff like that, and see if I can kind of make some layers in there of the organic material that should really help us out next year. The idea now is that I'm going to put the coarse materials as the bottom layer. It's got the sod that I tore up. I've got a couple of pieces of tree that was cut down that I'll throw in there. And then the piles of stuff that came from the garden themselves. In this case, this little piece, it never really grew. That's the same shape that it was when we took it out of the container when we bought it. These peppers didn't do very good this year, and that kind of goes to show. So more of the materials, more of the buckets, getting all of the plants out of there. There's a lot of tomatoes that were left on them, probably 5 or 6 or 8 pounds of tomatoes that just really never ripened. This one's really unfortunate. There's a lot of tomatoes on that. They just never ripened. After getting the plants out of the buckets and into the bottom of the bed, I took to a crowded bed that we have out front and pulled the blueberries out, since we don't really want the blueberries, to make room for that peony. Also cleared out a rose bush. Then moved on to the peonies in the backyard and put those in the bottom of the bin and got my nice base layer. Done a bunch of trimming around the yard. I pulled out those blueberries that, we don't really like blueberries. Trimmed off the roses, trimmed off all the peonies, swept up some leaves, just kind of got a layer in here of coarse this year material. So So hopefully now I'll put some of my compost on top of it that's got a little bit more activity going on, and it'll begin to break this down. And we'll put the dirt from the buckets back on top of it to finish, or on top of it, to two things. one, give us a nice topsoil, and two, have a place to keep this dirt throughout the winter. So like I said earlier, we don't want to keep it in the buckets, so we're going to keep it in this. So after getting the base layer in there, it was time to put the compost in. That's just a pile of leaves and stuff that I've been nursing for a couple of years, and figure it'll make a nice mid layer. And I found in the middle of this thing a broccoli plant. After spending probably about 4 weeks in that bin, you'd expect this to be a little dirtier or a little bit more decomposed than it was. So it just goes to show even the earth doesn't like broccoli. So I just filled up a nice layer of that until, I got to where there wasn't a whole lot of composted stuff, and then began to dump the buckets in it. Some of these buckets, it turns out, were from a couple years ago and had rocks in the bottom of it, so I had to pick the rocks out, which kind of made it interesting. I got all the buckets dumped into it and then began to break it up. Some of that was pretty old. You can see a lot of roots in it, but it turned out really nice. Very happy with that. We'll have to put a little more in. That was a lot of work, but got a couple 3 layers in there, some pretty coarse organic material, some semi-composted material, and then the topsoil from the garden. The garden's all taken apart. It's all down here. I think this is going to sink down a little bit this winter as it gets wet and everything begins to fill in. But I got to buy some more soil next year anyhow for the buckets, and then we'll buy enough to top up this also. Cut up some the peonies, cut up the blueberries, and put them on the bottom, and hopefully those will help it compost and come back. So anyhow, that's about it for today. I'm pretty wore out, but I got accomplished what I really needed to accomplish today. It's gorgeous weather. You can see the sun on the other side of the yard. The sky has been blue. It's chilly. It's probably 60 degrees. I'm not sure what it is, but maybe even colder than that. You saw what the tomatoes did, because it's been getting down to below freezing or right around freezing at night now, and they didn't like that, so they're like, done. So all those tomatoes that didn't ripen, that didn't make it, they're down here, and they get to become next year's crop, or a part of next year's crop. I've got high hopes for this. It's got all that organic material. It's got all that place. I don't know if you could see it, but as I was pulling the buckets off, the roots had come out the bottom. So the roots are going to get down to that stuff. They're going to be able to decompose that. They'll get some oxygen. I think they're going to be really happy in this thing. The biggest concern I have is the sun, right? The sun is right over there. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. How late is it? Let's find out. Yeah, it's 3:17 in the afternoon, and the sun is right below the fence line. You can tell by the light back there. So we'll see how this works. Obviously in the summer, the sun comes up right over here and comes across. Those big trees behind me will block it later in the afternoon, but the peonies do pretty good sitting right here, so maybe these will do really good sitting right here also. So anyhow, that's it for today, and we'll see you tomorrow, next time. I don't know what I've got left to do. I'll figure that out.